What is up guys, it's Lon Measy again and I'm super excited to be back. Shadowlands is shaping up to be a great expansion and I can't wait to again share with you guys my new gold making tips moving forward. And so in today's video, we're going to be getting into how I'm personally getting prepared for Shadowlands, professions, and alt-wise. And I also give you some tips to help you make the most gold possible at the start of Shadowlands. In part 1 of this video, I'm going to talk about Shadowlands professions and which ones I'll be prioritizing with a focus on legendary crafting. And then in part 2, I'm going to highlight some old world items to craft that are currently doing well and should continue doing well going into Shadowlands. And with that, let's get right into the video and my plans for making gold in Shadowlands. So right away, we're actually going to dive straight into Shadowlands legendary crafting because this is the primary focus of what my profession setup is going to be. And if we first take a look at what crafting a legendary item actually entails, first of all, any character that has access to the rune carver in Torghast, regardless of the professions they have, can craft a legendary item as long as they have collected all the materials it needs. And that includes, first of all, a base item which determines the item level and the slot type of your legendary. And these are crafted by all the standard gear crafting professions, blacksmithing, tailoring, leatherworking, as well as even jewel crafting. And then you'll also need 2 missives which determines its secondary stats and are crafted by scribes. And then the rest are just non-profession items including the memory of the rune carver, which is the actual legendary power you get to drop from whatever endgame content it drops from. And then there's also soul ash which drops from Torghast and has a weekly cap. Now before we move into my strategy, as a bit of a disclaimer, do keep in mind that a good strategy on paper will often attract more players and thus there could be some fierce competition as a result. And also of note is that because the soul ash you need from Torghast is actually capped per week, this could potentially lead to an oversupply of some of the crafted items on the market. But regardless, I'm still fairly confident in my strategy, especially since legendary crafting is not the only thing you can do with it. And with that, the core of my strategy is to focus on one of the main crafting professions for not only creating base items for legendaries, but also other forms of gear as well, with blacksmithing. I'm gonna have it on my main and pair it with mining as I level through Shadowlands. And that is because gathering professions tend to do really well at the beginning of each expansion, but I may replace it later on with another gear crafting profession. And as for what I'll be doing with my alts, a cool thing with Shadowlands is that a lot of these profession recipes can actually be learned at level 50. And besides being able to craft your standard stuff like enchants, gems, and even dark moon cards, alchemy and especially enchanting also help provide some of the materials needed by the gear crafting professions to craft these legendary base items. Enchanters can create materials for tailors and leatherworkers, and alchemists can do a daily transmute to produce bars for blacksmiths. And inscription is also going to be very useful by not only being able to create the missives needed for secondary stats on your legendary items, but also dark moon cards which have traditionally and historically done well at the beginning of each expansion. Now, another factor that very much influenced my decision to focus on gear crafting professions is the fact that there's an item called the Crafter's Mark Rank 2 that is only unlockable and craftable after getting enough reputation with the vanity in the mall. It is an item that allows you to upgrade your crafted gear and is buying on pickup. And so my plan with my main is to get into the mall and get reputation as early as I can and begin crafting upgraded gear, including the often coveted weapons, as a blacksmith. And before we move on to the next section of this video, I want to quickly point out this very useful tool developed by the Golddipper that not only outlines some profitable, efficient, and synergistic profession combinations, but also allows you to plan your own profession combinations. Also, I want to quickly thank Samadan Plays WoW for pointing this out in one of his weekly gold making wowhead articles, and I'll also link this in the description box below. Next, for just one more thing before we enter into the next section, if you still have a lot of Battle for Azeroth materials left over, be sure to sell them off, or at least sell the majority of them off before the expansion hits. Just keep in mind though that there could be some exceptions to this, such as if you're going to be crafting some mounts and other vanity items. Moving forward, I'm now going to go through some old world profession recipes that have been profitable for already many years and will continue to be profitable going into Shadowlands. And first up, I'm going to be going through some old world engineering crafts, mainly the mounts from mostly Pandaria, but also Battle for Azeroth, as well as some Wrath of the Lich King. Starting with Pandaria, which is probably one of the easiest ones to get into, but is still very profitable. we actually have a set of recipes called Yard's recipes, which includes the famous Sky Golem mount. To unlock them, you'll need to first reach level 75 with Pandaren Engineering, and then you can subsequently farm pretty much any Pandaren mobs until the Yard's recipe book drops. Fortunately though, the drop rate for this is actually very high, but you do have to have level 75 in Pandaren Engineering. And once you've obtained this, you'll unlock a set of recipes that each require an item called the Yard's Peculiar Energy Source, which is on a daily cooldown. But usually the only item you'll have to worry about crafting is the Sky Golem, which requires 30 of these Peculiar Energy Sources, meaning that you can only create a mount every 30 days per character. Personally, I have 2 characters on this daily cooldown and crafting the mount, but you could definitely do more depending on your server's supply and demand. I've just found that mounts and other vanity items are selling quite well right now, likely due to an increased number of new and especially returning players. Now, besides the Sky Golem, another profitable item that you can craft is the mechanical Pandaren Dragonling pet. It's often overlooked as a craft, but it's actually one of the most powerful battle pets, making it definitely something that will be in demand. Now, when it comes to Pandaren Engineering, the main materials you'll need are ghost iron bars as well as living steel. And thus, if you can spare the profession slot, it would actually be helpful to have a miner to sort of increase your profit margin by allowing you to be able to buy raw ore and then smelting that into bars. And having an alchemist is actually even more helpful because they can actually transmute these ghost iron bars into so-called trillium bars, which then can be transmuted into living steels, which are the expensive bars used in Pandaren Engineering and other things. Speaking of living steel and ghost iron, another really profitable Pandaren Engineering craft are the Geosynchronous World Spinner and Depleted Kiparian Rocket, both of which are mounts. One can be learned at Pandaria Engineering level 75 at this location in the Valley of the Four Winds, but each engineer can only learn one of these 2 recipes, with one belonging to Gnomish engineers and the other belonging to Goblin engineers. And so alongside being able to do more daily cooldowns to craft more Sky Golems, this is another reason for having at least 2 engineers at your disposal. Moving on to Battle for Azeroth Engineering, we have a couple more profitable mounts to craft, being the Mecha Mogul MK2 and the Ziwilag ATV. For the Mecha Mogul, you actually get the recipe and the materials needed to craft it from the Motherlode dungeon in Mythic mode, which means if you're going to be crafting these, it'd be ideal to have a max level Shadowlands character to be able to farm this dungeon. And as for the Ziwilag ATV mount, you simply have to reach BFA Engineering level 170 to be able to learn it, or rather half of it because the other half is actually crafted by blacksmiths. Moving on to Northrend Engineering, and these are a set of mounts that will be especially popular with returning players. We have the Mechanahog or the Mechgineer's Chopper, which are the Horde and Alliance counterparts. To obtain and learn the schematic for this, you'll not only have to get to max level Northrend Engineering, but you'll also have to hit Exalted with your faction's respective Northrend Excursion faction. Fortunately though, it's quite easy to farm rep for this. All you have to do is to not equip any faction tabard, and then go into the various Northrend dungeons to kill mobs and bosses there. Finally, going on to Warlords of Draenor Engineering, there are a few nifty toys that you can craft that don't have any level requirement. More important though is the Goblin Glider Kit, which also shouldn't have any sort of profession level requirement, and yet should be needed by everyone pretty much en masse at the beginning of the expansion. So if anything, you definitely want to get in on this. Next, going on to a few other professions, starting with jewel crafting, we have the famed Pandaria Panther mounts that you can craft after hitting level 75 with Pandaria jewel crafting and getting reputation with the Order of the Cloud Serpents. And along with the Pandaren Engineering mounts, these also require living steel to craft. Similarly, these also require living steel, and so do keep in mind that living steels are very important for all sorts of Pandaria crafting, and that having an alchemist to create them will greatly increase your profit margins. But anyway, over here we have the Pandaria Blacksmithing Reborn weapons, which are a set of expensive and coveted transmog that can be learned on the Thundering Isles on Pandaria. Moving on over to Old World Enchanting, we have the Tomes of Illusion, which provide weapon enchant appearance customization options. Each expansion before Legion, including Vanilla, has its own version, and some of them do have very specific ways of obtaining the recipe. And so I'll include a Wowhead link to their Tomes of Illusion guide in the description of this video. Next, with a new expansion coming out, and especially with the pre-patch, there are going to be a lot of people leveling alts, and after the expansion starts, just leveling in general. And so the following are some old enchants that I will personally be focusing on. And I also provide a link below to Power Leveler Des Mephisto's spreadsheet, which outlines not only the best enchants but also gear and even gems that are the best for leveling up and that you can potentially craft for a profit as well. Going on to the last profession I want to bring up, we have Inscription, which has been doing well for quite a while with the cosmetic glyphs that they can create. In my experience and on my server, Legion glyphs are by far the most profitable. And so my suggestion would be to definitely save the various Legion herbs as your favorites on your auction house search and just snatch them up whenever you see a good deal. Now these are just the main old world items that I'll be focusing on, and so there are definitely a few that I've missed out, starting with the Alchemy Vial of the Sands recipe, which also creates a very profitable and coveted mount. And as you can see from this spreadsheet, also by the Golddipper, which again I'll link in the description of this video, there are quite a few other vanity items like toys and pets and niche mounts that you can consider crafting as well. Finally, onto the last section, if you're going to be leveling alts, I want to just quickly mention that Warlords of Draenor is not only going to be the fastest leveling route, but also the most profitable. And that is because of the ability to set up your own garrison, which provides a plethora of gold making opportunities. The first of these are the weekly rare missions, which provide some pretty lucrative rewards such as the Medallion of the Legion, which gives you rep, and also the Coalfist Grondling mount. And these used to be the requirements for unlocking them, although they probably have changed with the Shadowlands level squish. And so I'll also link a Wowhead Garrison setup guide in the description as well. And for some useful buildings you can have with your garrison, first of all we have the Scribe's Quarters, which allows you to create these cards of omens, which you can actually vendor for a profit if you flip enough of them, or you can also sell them on the auction house. And by the way, if your character actually already has that profession, you won't actually need the profession building to be able to create any of these items. It's just that they allow you to create certain Warlords of Draenor profession items without having to actually have or learn that profession on your character. Anyway, onto the next profession building, we have the Tannery, which is the leatherworking building that allows you to create these Drums of Fury, which are a consumable that provide a pseudo Bloodlust haste effect that are useful for parties that don't have these classes that can provide the Bloodlust effect or even when going solo. Next, another very useful profession building if your character doesn't have that profession learned is the Engineering building, which actually allows you to create the Goblin Gliders that I've mentioned before. And for some other miscellaneous profit generating buildings, we have the Barn, which actually unlocks a fairly efficient gold farm even by today's standards, which involves you caging animals in exchange for various Warlords of Draenor resources. One of which is Savage Blood, which if you also have a trading post in your garrison, you can actually exchange it for raw gold. For each Savage Blood you turn in, you actually get roughly 50 gold. And I'm actually quite surprised that this has yet to be nerfed. Not to mention, the trading post also provides other benefits such as exchanging your garrison resources, which you can easily get from your mission table, for various useful crafting materials such as those actually used in the Goblin Gliders, and if you want, you can also make a profit by selling some of these materials raw. And that was how I'm preparing to make gold in Shadowlands, and how you can do so as well. But before we go, I want to quickly plug some of my other YouTube channels, which are what I've been working on during my hiatus from this channel. And so besides this channel, I actually have two other channels that I frequently upload to, with one about investing and another about how to start your own digital business. For example, I actually have videos on there about how I started this Lon Measly gaming channel and even tips for how you can do the same. So if you're interested, I'd love for you to come by and check them out. And also rest assured that with Shadowlands, I'll also be uploading regularly on this channel again. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you liked it, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.